Mr. Binks, you know how every season has its pros and cons for dogs. Summer, yes, it's lighter for longer and great for going out with your dog. But what about when a sudden heat wave strikes? Well, that's why we're jumping on Zoom now to speak to lead vet at the Blue Cross, Anna Ewers-Clark, about what we can do to keep our dogs cool. I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. Anna Ewers-Clark, welcome to A Dog's Life.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Now, Anna, you are a veterinary lead at the Blue Cross.
Yes, so we see lots and lots of pets at our hospitals. We're very busy.
I bet you are, particularly, potentially with, hotter weather coming on. I mean, when the hot weather hits, do you see a rise in emergency heat stroke cases?
So unfortunately, we do see heat stroke cases when we have the warmer weather. I think it's often a case where people aren't prepared and they don't always realise that a day that might not seem as warm for you can actually be really, really hot for your pet.
Yeah, so why is that? Is it to do with different body temperatures and, the fact that we're able to sort of run around in shorts and a t-shirt, but of course dogs can't?
Absolutely. So our dogs are kind of in a big puffy jacket the whole time because they have a lot of fur and they also can't lose heat in the same way that we do as humans. So it does mean that they are more sensitive to the heat. We also know that sometimes our dogs aren't very good at realizing it's a hot day and taking it a bit easier. We'll go and sit in the shade, we'll have a break, whereas a lot of pets will be really keen to still keep running around, playing fetch, and that can lead to them actually getting heat stroke, unfortunately.
And there will be this summer, first time dog owners that haven't experienced, a summer yet with their dog. And I think it's that group of people that can get caught out, perhaps. What do you think?
Yes, I think 100% for new dog owners. And also, with people with different types of dogs might not realise that their dog is more sensitive. We know, for example, that certain flat-faced breeds can struggle more in the hot weather. So it's all about being prepared and knowing what's right for your pet, especially if they're newer to the family.
And it's a bit like with people, isn't it? It's always the young and the older that are more susceptible to weather extremes in general.
Yes, and we do definitely say, you need to keep in mind, particularly if you've got an older pet, or as you say, a very young one, and especially when we get these really sudden spikes in temperature, just like people, they will gradually adjust to a slightly warmer compared to the winter, and they do get their summer coats, things like that. But when we have these sudden heat waves, or it gets very, very hot, if it's too hot for you, it's definitely too hot for your pet.
That's such a good way of putting it. You've got to understand as well. I think that their body temperature is 2 degrees higher than ours anyway, and that coupled with not being able to take their fur coat off can make a dangerous situation happen quite unexpectedly.
Yes, and you also don't always think about where your pet is. If you've got your dog in the house and they're in a warm room, they can't open the windows, they can't switch on a fan. So you need to make sure that you're thinking about what they're doing and making sure that you're putting those plans in place, especially if you're leaving them on their own and you're going out for the day.
Absolutely. I mean, what are the key signs for pet parents to recognize really that their dog might be going into being too hot?
So I think the earliest sign that we'll often see is that pets do start panting. So your dog, if they start panting and they're really, sort of trying to catch their breath, that's often one of the early signs that they're getting a bit hot. Panting is a really good way for dogs to kind of breathe out that hot air. So although some pets will, they will pant a lot of the time, you'll often see that they'll start panting really heavily. Often when a pet's getting too hot, they will also start slowing down. With my own dogs, I notice that when the weather gets warmer, they will quite often maybe, just slow down. They won't be as quick to go and bring the ball back. And that's really an early sign, even if it doesn't feel like that much of a warm day, that they could be getting a bit overheated. As things progress, if you don't pick up those early signals, you can start to see more obvious and more serious signs, things like drooling from the mouth, and you will often see them, lying down, not being able to get up. In really extreme cases, they can actually completely collapse, and you can see really extreme things like fitting. So obviously, if you would hope your pet will never end up in that situation, but if you do spot those signs in your dogs, it could be heat stroke, it could be an emergency. You need to get them to the vet straight away.
Yeah, really, really good advice. And it can take people by surprise, and, it's so important to be practical and walk your dog early in the morning before the sun gets its strength. There's that expression, isn't there? Mad dogs and Englishmen stay out in the midday sun. And, yeah, and that's so true. So, I mean, summer's lovely because we've got the lighter, longer days. So you've got the opportunity to walk earlier and walk later. And would that be something you'd recommend?
Absolutely. If the temperatures are going to be getting higher, early in the morning, late at night, when those temperatures have dropped and the sun's gone home, that is always going to be a cooler time of day. It's also about looking for, shaded places and making sure you're taking loads of water with you, so you can keep your dog hydrated, and you can keep them happy and comfortable while they're out for their walk. If the temperatures really are climbing, it might be better to think about whether to skip a walk, particularly if you've got a pet that is more sensitive to the heat. As we've said, particular breeds like flat-faced breeds, any pets that have got medical conditions, older pets, it's safer for them to miss a walk, and you can do some fun and games at home, to keep them, sort of exercised and keep their brains working without having to risk taking them out into that hot weather that could be dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also darker coated dogs tend to absorb the rays more quickly, than lighter coated dogs. So that's something also to think of, for myself, because both my dogs are quite black in color. So that's something that, I'm conscious of, particularly with my small dog, Mr. Binks. You can actually see him there in the background. He might do his little dance for us in the mow. He just, I mean, this is the thing. Dogs are, they're totally not stupid, but sometimes you might think that they are, right, Anna? Because he'll love to sunbathe and he adores it. And I literally have to pick him up and move him, indoors. I mean, he absolutely almost gets comatose in a way with the sun's rays.
And I think that a lot of dogs do enjoy the sunshine. And as you say, there are going to be some dogs who want that and other dogs that don't. But if you do have a dog that likes to lie out in the sunshine, you do need to keep an eye on them because they won't always move. They don't recognize those signs, as being potentially a problem. And, it applies to different coat types as well. If you've got a dog that doesn't shed, or a thicker coated dog, consider getting them groomed to help them out and make sure that you are avoiding those hot temperatures. The other thing I think we often remember for ourselves, but don't always think about for our pets, is sunburn, actually. Pets that with thinner fur, lighter colours, and those areas that don't have as much fur on, places like the ears, the nose, the belly, if you've got a dog that likes to lie upside down in the sunshine, it is really important to make sure that they don't get sunburn. And applying sun cream, you can buy pet sun creams, or using a child safe sun cream, is something that we would really recommend, and not always the top of your list when you think about doing it for yourself. But say fur's great, but it doesn't protect from everything.
No, that's such good advice. And, you were mentioning there, enrichment indoors. And there's so much that can be done. And there's lots of great cooling tips, like freezing broth cubes or adding ice cubes to their water bowls so it stays nice and cool, directing a fan across a nice iced water bowl so that, the air circulating is a little bit fresher, So there's all these little great tips that you can do.
Absolutely. And we would definitely say, having those things ready to go when the hot weather arrives, which we're hoping it's coming back, and, we're going to have a lovely summer, but making sure you have, a fan in the house, that you can buy screens to cover windows, to keep your dog safe. So you can have the windows open and they're not going to be at risk of, falling out or jumping out of a window that could be dangerous. And just making sure you've got a room where you can keep it shaded, especially as the sun comes round during the day. In our house, one of our rooms gets really hot in the sunshine because we've got a window that faces south, which is beautiful, but I know to make sure that I don't leave the dogs in there because it can get very warm during the day. So it's thinking about all those things. And as you say, there's so much you can do to keep them entertained in the house. My little dogs love me to go, we play hide and seek with their dinner. So I'll take some of their food and hide it in different places around the house, and then let them out and let them sort of run around and find that. And it's a great way for them to get exercise. It really uses their brains, but I'm not having to worry about taking them out in the heat.
Yeah, absolutely. And lots of gadgets, the interactive toys, from Kongs. I mean, there's so much now available. There's no excuse really not to keep, your dog mentally stimulated. But if you're lucky enough to have a garden, I mean, would you recommend investing in one of these now dog specific paddling pools?
So paddling pools are always a really interesting one. Some dogs really enjoy the water, and paddling pools can be really great for that. But you do always have to be careful that obviously they're not going to slip or injure themselves, and also that they're not going to get too excited about the water, because we do see sometimes that dogs will just get really overwhelmed, run around, really enjoy playing in the water, and actually it's having the opposite effect, that they are getting a bit too hot. It's a great thing to have, and it can be great. Obviously water does help keep them cool, but just making sure that you're keeping an eye on them, and that they're not doing anything that's going to cause them any mischief, because I've got one dog who absolutely adores the water, so we have to keep it a little bit moderate for him.
And what type of dog is he?
He's a terrier. He's a Norfolk Terrier.
Oh, wow. I do love Norfolks. I do love them. It's such a shame that Norfolks are on the endangered or the vulnerable British breed list, aren't they?
We're very fortunate to have them. They are absolutely wonderful dogs. They've got a big character for their size, but I personally love that. And we've got two, and they're like chalk and cheese, absolute opposites, but they're wonderful. And they definitely are a breed that feels the heat because of their coat. So we've made sure that we've got them groomed, ready for this summer season. So hopefully that's going to help them stay a bit cooler.
Oh, bless them. Gosh, I do love Norfolks. I love terriers. Well, I've got two. So I do love them very much. But okay, so the big message that people seem to forget every single year, I think you know what I'm about to say, is never leave a dog in a parked car in hot weather, even if you've parked in the shade. Don't do that thing. Go to the supermarket, think I'm going to be 5 minutes, because that's all it takes, isn't it, Anna?
It is incredible how quickly a car will heat up. And actually, even if you park in the shade, the air temperature is something that will build up in there. And the other thing that people often don't think about is that when you get in your vehicle, you'll turn on the engine and the air conditioning or the fan will come on and blow cold air on you. So you actually think that the temperature inside the vehicle is lower than it actually is. Even with the windows open, even if you leave the boot open often, you will see that temperature climbing. And the other thing I've been really surprised to find out is how quickly that can happen, even on a day that's not that warm outside. It can actually get 10 to 15 degrees hotter in a car than the air temperature outside. And that's a huge difference, a dangerous level of temperature. So I know it's difficult. And, we've all been in those situations where you've got your dog with you, you need to pop in the shop. And obviously, there's all those safety considerations around, perhaps leaving them outside the shop. But I would say it's not worth the risk. Take them home. You can always pop back out once they're comfortable and they can relax at home. So it's just not worth the risk.
No, it so isn't, yet people do it every year. But touching on this and cars, you've got to bear in mind traveling, if you're staycationing this summer, to plan journeys around the heat of the day. Because what you said there about the air conditioning, sure, if you're in the front of the car, yeah, you feel the blast. But it's so interesting. Aircon doesn't necessarily travel effectively enough to the back seat or to the boot. And we know now that dogs can't really travel on the front seat, even if they're in a seatbelt. They've got to be safely contained in a carrier or a seatbelt on the back seat for safety reasons, and that's now law. I think you can get extra fans, can't you, that can be installed into the car, so you can keep the back seat cooler, and you make effort to do so, because relying on the aircon alone, so you might be driving along oblivious that your dog's sort of really panting on the back seat and really, getting into a bit of trouble.
100%. We have a fan for our dogs because they travel in the boot. So we've actually got a fan for them that we deliberately set up. And the other thing that's important is stopping at regular intervals and just checking that they are okay, and making sure you've got plenty of water with you for that journey. It's also really important to think about those kind of breakdown situations, which no one wants to imagine, or getting stuck in a traffic queue. And actually, the car can get very, very hot, and we know our pets are more sensitive to that. So I would always say, if you do need to travel and it's hot weather, try and do that, early in the morning, late in the evening, break up the journey and make sure they get a chance to, get out in the fresh air and cool down, have a nice drink, because especially if you've got a pet that's a bit stressed by car travel, again, that's going to make them more prone to feel the heat. So just making sure you're really considering that. Might mean an early start for you while your lovely dog gets to recline in their travel state, but it is worth it to just keep them really safe while you're traveling.
What do you think about, all these various gadgets at the moment, like cool mats and cooling vests that, there's lots and lots of different ones available on the market. I mean, would you recommend a cooling mat, for example, for the car?
Yes, they can actually work really well. A lot of cooling mats, the idea of them is they have a gel in that stays cooler basically than the body temperature. One thing to bear in mind is that they will eventually warm up. So they have a really good effect at the beginning, and that's fantastic. But after probably 5-10 minutes, your pet actually needs to get off them and then get back on to feel the benefit of that cooling again. So again, for long journeys, not so ideal. The other thing, if you've got a chewer, we know lots of dogs do like to chew their beds.
We do know
Then
that.
they're not ideal, because they can unfortunately be toxic, what's inside, especially if they eat a lot of it. You can get non-toxic ones. It's always worth checking the ingredients, but it's not worth the risk if you've got a pet that's going to be chewing that, particularly if you're in a vehicle and it's very difficult to stop them without being, until you can pull over safely.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, such good advice. Every season, I think, has its pros and cons for dogs. Winter, obviously, the cons are it's dark, you've got shorter daylight hours, and it can be very cold, which also has its own issues for dogs. And the same with summer, this the worry of the heat. It is something. But let's hope we all stay safe and summery this season, hey?
Absolutely. And I think it's all about, thinking of these things in advance, making sure any symptoms of heat stroke, making sure you know how to prevent it, and then you can enjoy the summer and enjoy the sunshine. And it is just such a lovely opportunity to spend time with your dog, get outdoors a bit more. And I think it's a wonderful time to have a dog. So I think that all year round, though. So I'm a bit biased.
No, same here, Anna. Yes. And I must just say, it's been fun having a chat with another Anna, because I'm personally quite biased, as I'm sure you are. We can spell our name backwards and still stay the same.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic name. So it's been a pleasure being here today and chatting to you all about hot weather. Let's hope it brings out the sunshine.
Oh, let's hope it does. Yes. Well, Anna, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
hope to be in touch again.
Yes, we'd love to speak to you again. Take care.
That's our show, Mr. Binks. What did you think? Yes, what good advice. Indeed, from Anna at the Blue Cross. And you're right, it's time for Woof of the Week. When the weather warms up, please remember that dogs overheat so quickly. Their body temperature is 2 degrees hotter than ours, and that's with a fur coat on. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, go on, rate and review the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really love a good review, and it really does help. Thanks again, of course, to Anna Ewers-Clark for joining us today from the Blue Cross, and all the links are in the show notes. Thanks, of course, to Mike Hansen for all the music and production as ever. Find out more about him at Pod People UK. And if you want to find out a bit more about me, I'm at Anna Webb Dogs. What's that, Mr. Binks? Yes, you're right. We will be back in your feed next Sunday. So why don't you go and subscribe? Because it's free. But not only that, it means you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.